Get ready. Thursday on the field, but all the activity starting at Lucas Oil Stadium coming up tomorrow as the NFL Scouting Combine gets rolling. And it's really, after you get done with all the coaching hires, this is the start of the new football season. Welcome back. I'm Jeff Phelps. Dan Mennigan in for Andy today. We go to the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline. A gentleman who would love to throw his golf clubs in the car, but he's going to be too busy to play golf in Indianapolis. He'll be driving out today. He's ready to roll. You can read all of his coverage in the Chronicle Telegram at brownzone.com. He's Mr. Scott Petrak. Hello, Scott.
Scott, how are you?
I'm fellas.
There's no golf to be played in Indy.
No?
I don't think.
Save some room in the trunk then.
I'd take him anyway. You're a little farther south, you know. You might end up getting in some sunshine.
You might. You never know. What the heck?
I got no time at the combine, fellas. It's all work.
That's what I said.
All right, so then the better thing. Do you have the reservation set for St. Elmo's?
You know what? I'm not in charge of that. I think somebody does, though.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Okay. Good man. Just make sure your priorities are in order.
Their onion ring appetizer, it's like a mound of onion rings that no 4 people could ever eat in one sitting. I ordered it with 2. It didn't work.
Wow, that is a lot of onion rings.
Yeah, we left like 2/3 of it on the plate. It was unbelievable. So the Browns are going. They're going to be there. They're going to be scouting. Where are they going to be looking the most, Scott? Will they be looking at offensive linemen more than wide receivers? Are they going to sneak over and look at quarterbacks just for giggles? What are they going to do?
I think you got to look at all 3 of those spots. You know, we won't know who they're going to draft in what position gets most of the attention until free agency is over. You know, if they trade for or sign a number 1 receiver, then that probably takes a receiver out of the equation at 6. But right now, given the state of the roster as it is, I think at 6, it's all about receivers and offensive line. Probably not in that order. Probably offensive line and then receivers. I do think quarterback is in play somewhere. I don't know if that's at 24 or 39 or not into the 3rd round. Again, that depends on if they, sign Malik Willis or trade for Mac Jones or whatever that veteran quarterback option is. But I think this week, everything's on the table. It's going to be heavily slanted toward offense. And when you're talking about the offensive needs, it's line, receiver, and a quarterback. It's just a matter of a guy that they as a starter. Do they add just somebody to the depth chart to handle that?
Scott, do you see them during this combine week setting up, put it this way, putting out the breadcrumbs of any kind of a trade that we may see coming up shortly? Or do you see this as merely being them out there looking at the prospects to come?
Oh, no. The combine is all about, not all about, but it's a lot about what goes on behind the scenes. And whether that is talking to your own free agents to be and deciding whether or not a contract might be able to get done, whether it's laying the foundation for the negotiations that can start, quote unquote, legally on March 9th, or whether it's talking trade with, GMs and personnel people across the league, because this is a perfect spot to do that. Trades can get agreed to at any time. Now they can't be executed until March 11th when the league year starts, but we've seen plenty of times where trades come out ahead of that and agreements are reached, and it's just a matter of wait till the league year starts. So I think all that stuff is getting done in Indy, behind the backdrop of there's 300 plus college kids working out.
I get the feeling, you tell me, this could be a real busy trade time for Andrew Berry. He has 3 fifth-round picks. You want to take 3 fifth-round players? If you could package, move up, if you could just trade a 5th for a veteran on another team who's looking for a different deal and the team's had enough of them, I would think you could bring in a couple of vets there, Scott, and I hope that that's the path he takes.
Yeah, we've certainly seen him use those fifth-round picks in that capacity before, and I'm with you. You don't need to draft 10 guys, and you don't need 3 fifth-rounders, whether it's he trades those for veterans or trades them to move up in the draft or get an extra pick next year. Mm-hmm. He's going to, you would assume he's going to use at least a couple of those picks in a trade. It's going to be interesting, Jeff and Dan, to see, do they pursue a veteran offensive lineman? I mean, those guys are hard to come by in trades, right? Because nobody wants to give away their starting center or starting left tackle. Now receivers, there seems to be a more healthy market for receivers, when you're talking about trades. And we've seen Andrew Berry trade for Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. So I would certainly not rule that out. And if you find a team that's not willing to pay a guy that's coming up on a contract, or not willing to pay what he's making already, or a guy that's a little disgruntled looking for a fresh start, I mean, that's where these trades happen. So I think Andrew Berry will be active. He's shown the history of being active. And, it kind of feels like receiver when you're talking about that. Maybe there's a quarterback out there, Mac Jones, Anthony Richardson. That's another position in play there. Again, it's so heavily slanted toward the offense. I think you can narrow your focus. And that doesn't mean they're not going to sign any defensive players. They might need a linebacker if Devin Bush leaves in free agency. What happens with Ronnie Hickman in free agency? They're probably not going to draft, however many, if they pick 8 players, they're not probably all going to be on offense. But you can focus, I think, most of your attention on offense.
Scott Petrak joining us on the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline. You can read him at brownzone.com. So it came out a little bit last week that Jaguars coach Liam Cohen and GM James Gladstone were skipping the combine. So we know the Rams have done this in the past as well, where they've skipped the combine. Do you think we're going to see more and more teams skipping this opportunity to talk to these players and get official measurements while they're there?
You could see – I don't think it's going to be widespread. I think you could see some teams, whether it's a handful, maybe up to 8, say, you know what, we're good, we don't need to go there. I still think it's incredibly valuable. I know when you talk to people in the Browns organization, they do too, and it's an easy travel for the Browns, right? They could drive over, it's a quick flight. It's different from L.A., so I think it makes sense for the Browns. I know so much of this information nowadays is available to teams, and that's the main reason they feel like they don't have to take their whole team to Indy. But I think even those teams probably have to have some people on site, right? Whether it's medical people or just some scouts or some assistant coaches, because you get FaceTime with all these players, whether it's the formal interviews or the informal interviews in the hotel rooms at nights and during the day. Like, there is so much to be gained at the combine that I think it's short-sighted for these teams to withdraw from it.
Scott, I look at the quarterback situation, and we know Fernando Mendoza is all set to be a Raider. And after that, it would appear that Ty Simpson's the next guy to go, the guy from Alabama. And I don't know that, if the Browns think he's phenomenal and he can be the guy, okay, they're in a position they could just take him probably at 6 if they think that, and I think we'd all be stunned. Other than that, the idea of drafting a quarterback makes no sense in this draft to me. Does it make any sense to you? Like if they bring in another guy in the 2nd or 3rd or 4th round while they're sitting there with Shedeur and with Dylan Gabriel and with Deshaun Watson for another year?
Yeah, that's interesting, Jeff. I would lean personally toward trying to find someone more established. And I keep coming back to Malik Willis, who, in my opinion, is, the number 1 free agent quarterback. I don't think you're going to have to break the bank to get him. I know the sample size is small, but I went back and watched what he did in his, he played a bunch against the Bears, and then he started against the Ravens toward the end of the season for Green Bay this year. And I was really impressed by what he did. So if you said, okay, here's your 2 options, go get a guy that you think comes in and day one is the starter and see if he's any good, right? It's a short-term contract. See if he can be your guy. It feels like he's the kind of guy Todd Monken would like. He's a dual-threat quarterback. I think that makes more sense than adding just another guy to the pile who you don't know is going to be ready to go week 1. And, how do you divide the reps with 3 young guys? Or, even if you kind of push Dylan Gabriel to the side, let's say, how do you handle the reps with Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson and quarterback X from the draft? So I get what you're saying, Jeff, but they need to add a quarterback. And if it doesn't come through free agency or trade, then, I think they draft somebody. Now, I don't know if that guy is at 24. Let's say Ty Simpson falls at 24. They had him graded at 15, and they say, hey, we think he can come in and be a long-term starter, whether it's 2026 or beyond. You can't rule that out. Do they take a flyer on a guy like Drew Aller or Garrett Nussmeier in the 3rd round and say, hey, we think this guy has potential. There's nothing wrong with adding another young guy to the group. I think all that's on the table, but I do get your premise that it just confuses what could be a confusing situation already. But, if you don't we don't have final determinations on Dylan Gabriel. I mean, maybe people do, but let's assume you don't have them on Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders. One way or the other, if they're the guy or they're not going to be the guy. I just don't think that precludes you from adding someone else, whether it's a veteran or a young guy, because you have to figure out the most important position in the game.
Wyatt Teller penned a really nice letter thanking the fans for their time.
Did he ever?
Yeah, as he is moving on from the Cleveland Browns have announced that they are moving on from Wyatt Teller. Do you see any other names on the horizon that Browns fans should keep an eye on, who maybe the next one who will write a very nice letter about their time in Cleveland?
A very nice letter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, David
How else would you
Njoku,
put
Wyatt Teller.
No, you're right. Yeah, David Njoku did the same.
It's a really nice letter by David Njoku, too.
Yeah, I mean, they wrote the letters. The Browns haven't, ruled them out coming back. But what that means is they had talks with the Browns. The Browns said, we're not going to meet your demands, or we're just going to let you go to free agency. So the guy said, okay, I'm going to tell everybody that I'm leaving, which is appreciated. And guys that have been here a long time. So, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of guys leave. I can't tell you who's going to write the letters or not. I mean, Joe Bitonio has a couple weeks now to decide whether or not he's going to retire. They extended the deadline on when the contract voids. So he hasn't made that decision yet, and that's a big one. And, you met Njoku and Teller have been here a long time. They haven't been here as long as Joe Bitonio, right? 2014, one of the best guys ever to cover, to be around, to play for this franchise. So he's the big one. And if he retires, there's going to be a letter. And it'll probably be some kind of news conference too. So he's one to keep your eye on. It's a little bit different situation because the Browns would welcome him back if he wants to keep playing, where I think the Browns were done with Njoku and Teller. Jack Conklin's going to be gone. You look at the free agency. I mentioned Devin Bush, the linebacker, earlier. He might have played himself out of Cleveland because he had a really solid year. He had 3 interceptions, a couple of sacks, a couple of forced fumbles, like 125 tackles. And, the Browns already have Carson Schlesinger. I don't know if they're going to pay a number 2 linebacker what Devin Bush might get on the market. So I think he's a strong candidate to leave in free agency. Punter Corey Bojorquez could leave, and the Browns could choose to go younger at that position and cheaper at punter. A guy like Shelby Harris or Rayshon Jenkins. There could be some movement here. A couple of guys to watch are the restricted free agents, Ronnie Hickman and Mamu Diabate on defense. Both guys are restricted. The Browns have to decide if they're going to place a tender on them, what kind of tender. Do they want both guys back? Ronnie Hickman is your starting free safety. So if he gets away, then they don't have anybody right now on the roster, I don't think, to step in. So that creates a hole on, the defense, which they're relying on to carry this team once again.
Scott, from what you just said, you don't expect Jack Conklin back?
No, he didn't play hardly at all last year. He was dealing with, injuries at the beginning of the season. Then he had a couple concussions that sidelined him. I think Jack will hit the market. I think he has a question to just whether or not he retires or tries to continue playing somewhere else, but I do not see him coming back here.
Myles Garrett had a chat with that well-known news source, Casino Guru, which I thought was just great. But he came out and he said his big goal is to break the all-time sack record, and which is kind of nice. You get that. But he basically said, I want to do it, and I want to do it in the next 5 years. And was asked, you're going to play late in your career and everything else? And his answer was, hell no, ain't no way. I get that, don't you, from Myles?
Yeah, it's really interesting with Myles because he's got 5 more years on the contract. I think he's 75. He needs 75 sacks to break Bruce Smith's record. So it's 15 a year.
It's a lot.
Which is doable.
It's a lot, though. Yeah, it's still a lot, though.
I bet it's a lot, right? And you would think it's a lot when you get to be 34, 35. You just turned 30. You probably have to front load those, although Myles is a freak, so maybe he's playing this well at 34 or 35. I wouldn't put it past him one bit. But the bigger picture, when I remember talking to Myles early on when he was drafted, and it felt like, or I think he said it, that he was going to have a short career, that he wasn't going to be a guy that played 10 years and hung around for a while. And then I sat down with him before one of these seasons, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, Myles, do you expect to keep playing for a while? And he's like, yeah. And we had to talk about how that had changed, and he settles into life in the NFL, and it's everything he hoped it would be, and he's not looking to get out and do other things. So he probably means it, and this is probably his last contract, and at 35 he walks away. But I certainly think there's wiggle room there because he's changed his position on that from 2017 when he entered the league, where he thought he'd be quick, one of those short careers. Mm-hmm. He's already changed that, so I wouldn't rule him out, signing one more deal or extending this. I'm not guaranteeing he's walking away after his contract's over.
Scott Petrak joining us on the hotline. All right, Scott, I have kind of a dark question for you, and I apologize now.
These are always fun.
So the Jordan Addison situation that took place in Minnesota is burnt into my brain, which was that he was busted for an off-the-field event. They went the whole season without laying down any kind of a punishment, the NFL being they. And then the next season, they punished him for that. Is there a chance we see anything like that for Isaiah Bond, Quinshon Judkins, or Devin Bush?
Well, Devin Bush, I believe, I know that it's not only based on what the legal system decides, but I'm pretty sure he's found not guilty. That I feel like that's run its course. That's been in the system for a while. Those don't feel like those type of cases to me. Quinshon, I just don't think so. I think that's something you don't have to worry about. I feel like Addison's was more serious isn't the right word, right? Because they're all serious allegations and things. But I think from a legal perspective, it might have been more. There might have been more there. So I don't think that that's something that should keep fans up at night, or I don't think the Browns are too concerned about that. But, the league hasn't given final resolution, but it also gets off the radar. And so I think that's definitely a back burner type thing.
Okay. We'll see where that goes. I'm anxious to read your stuff at brownzone.com. You're heading out for the Combine. We'll hear from Todd Monken. We'll hear from Andrew Berry. And Todd Monken will be talking about, I hope, Scott, here's what I'm looking for out of the offense, and I'll bet he says nothing about any of the quarterbacks other than I'm intrigued by all of them.
I bet he gets asked about him, though, Jeff.
I'll bet he does, and I know who's going to do it. Thank you for being that guy.
And also, we'll take that moment to point out Scott Petrak available at a nominal service fee to write any goodbye letters to the fans.
There you go. Ghostwriter, Scott Petrak.
I can do that. Yeah, I can handle that.
Thanks, buddy. Have fun.
Thanks, dude.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Scott Petrak on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline.